This is the Truth Be Told podcast, where we unlock the secrets of strategic communication. Welcome to this episode of the Truth Be Told podcast. I am Dave Thompson, your host, and I'm to bring to you our guest, Joumana Kidd. Joumana's been a great resource when it comes to understanding how journalists might engage in effective or ineffective communication techniques. Joumana's had experience working for NBA TV, also working with TV show Extra, covering events like the Grammys and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremonies. Joumana's also been an actress and starred on reality TV shows. It's a lot of unique experience that she brings to us on how to better communicate on the red carpet, and how that same concept of developing rapport and asking effective questions can help us in our everyday lives. Simultaneously, Joumana's also been on the other side of the coin, living in a very public life as she was married to her ex-husband, NBA star Jason Kidd, and since then was the victim of a financial crime and identity theft scam. We're going to talk to Joumana about all of these different topics. But in part one, I'm excited to bring Joumana into the conversation as we learn more about how to be an effective communicator from a journalist perspective. Before we get into anything, I just wanted to thank you and kind of kick off this whole episode, acknowledging that I feel like in your personal and professional life, you've had so many experiences, and it seems like you've never been afraid to share and discuss and inspire others. So I just want, before we even get anything, thank you for that. I think that's powerful.
Well, thanks for having me.
But so I was kind of going back through how your career started, and we'll start at school. So you went to school and graduated from San Francisco State?
Yeah, I graduated from San Francisco State. I majored in speech and communications and minored in cultural communications. I always wanted to get into journalism, but the courses weren't available. Like they were just like, I didn't realize that San Francisco State was the school for journalism.
Yeah.
So it was really difficult. So I had to change my major, but I was fortunate enough to, I first, right out of college, I was working as a marketing rep for Anheuser-Busch. I was in charge of the contemporary marketing team. And again, it was just kind of the first job out of college. But as soon as I got the opportunity to start, like really chasing my dream is when I started working. I started doing a show in Phoenix. I was a co-host, Sun's Jam Session. Gosh, it's so
Okay.
I'm really dating myself. Yeah, so that was my first big break was Sun's Jam Session, and it was just like once a week we would tape silly stuff with the mascot.
Yeah. Did you get to dress up as the mascot?
You name it, the mascot. The person, like I forget what they were called. They were like the safari crowd something, and like we would like yeah, I did it all. Like that's one thing about me. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I actually, one of my first jobs was I used to work at Red Robin as a hostess, and I would dress up as the Red Robin bird, and we would hand out bird bucks
Oh my
out
goodness.
the
Well,
hall.
there's a fun fact for the episode.
Yeah, no
No.
pride over here.
Well, it's funny you say that because I feel like, the whole kind of theme of our podcast is on effective communication. And I'm going to talk a lot about, especially you for marketing and in the media. But I really think servers and bartenders and people in that hospitality space, like that, they have to be successful. You got to have a foundation of how do you deal with just
I
diverse
not
groups of
even
people all the time.
not even just that. I think that every human should work retail, work in a restaurant. Like they should like do these things because then their tolerance and the way they treat people will be so different. Like I can literally be at a restaurant with friends and they're just like, oh my God. And I'm like, clearly they're slammed. And you know what I mean? Like I
Right.
understand, like, and it's difficult to understand like the different vocations when you haven't like, had to experience it.
Yeah, have a little perspective a little bit on the
Yeah.
process, which is
Yeah.
interesting. And I think
Yeah.
that relates to these things in your kind of career field of what you had to do is you're talking to so many different people in different aspects of
Yeah.
their life, some good, some bad, some difficult. So I find that pretty interesting. So you went through this kind of first job in the media world where you're
Yeah.
dressing up as a mascot once in a while. And then what happened next?
It grew into other things. Like even with that show, with Sun's Jam Session, we started doing, pieces on players. And then what was after that? I had gotten married. I was married to Jason at the time. And I I was just offered a morning spot on like the local NBC or something. I don't remember which network it was. And I was so excited. I remember I was dreading the fact that I'd have to be up at like 5 a.m. because it was like morning show, but I was really excited about it. And then he got traded. And so then we moved to New York, and I had great opportunities in New York. I started actually working for NBA TV, um, just kind of covering the games in the tri-state area, as well as like, the Olympics, and like really like, awesome opportunities there. I started working with Extra as a correspondent, and that was probably the biggest like real lesson of media, was working for Extra, because you would walk into the Extra offices and it sounded like the stock market. Like you've got you know a, couple dozen people all in their cubicles yelling out to each other different articles that like they're reading in the Post, and like it's like crazy, it's like overwhelming, and it's like, this person just did this person, da, 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 like. And I was like, wow, like this is nuts. And so yeah, so that was probably the most enlightening, and it was a fun experience. But that was it. And then after that, I did a couple shows on my own with just like, then I kind of, we did the syndicated shows, which was like The Journey with Joumana. And that was really fun. It was really cool. We had like, I had my own set. I had, like my own team, and that was really, really fun. And then ended up just doing a lot of freelance work. Like I, did a little thing for ESPN, a little bit for like Fox News, whatever, kind of bounced around. And then that was pretty much it, as far as the whole media career went.
So it was a lot of it was in sports. Were you interested in sports as the vertical you wanted to get into, or was it
Here's
just
the irony of it is I grew up probably watching football more than anything. My dad was an avid football fan. I enjoyed college football. So the NBA it was like a crash course. And it
yeah,
was just kind of amazing how quick and into it I got. Like, next thing you know, I'm like, no. And I've stepped out of it obviously now, and I listen to the kids and stuff, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, who are all these people? Like, who are all these children in the league? But
yeah?
at that time, I'd have to say I was pretty well versed, and it was an easy game to fall in love with.
We should have clarified this in the beginning. Who's your football team?
Oh gosh, that's a tricky one. Okay, so who is my football team? Um, I'm a supporter of people. That's one thing about me, is that, it's not that
What
I
a
jump
great
around.
way to answer that question.
But it's so true. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
like I have a kid who was like my second son. He was like my son, who plays for the Giants. I'm always rooting for them. Then once they're out of it, like right now I have a dear friend who is with the Chiefs organization. So I'm
yeah,
100%, Cincinnati, like, I'm rooting for the Chiefs,
yeah,
but I feel like, I hate to say it, but I feel like growing up, I was always just like a Raider fan, even though I'm from the Bay
yeah,
Area. Raiders were
yeah.
my. How
That's
about
all
you?
right. I can understand. Well, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, so I've been a loyal Buffalo
Oh,
Bills fan.
it's like a
I
cult there,
know.
right? There's nothing else.
It's yeah. Hey, hey, hey. It is a loyal town,
Hmm.
and it's interesting because it's more like you said you're a supporter of people, and I feel like sports. Some people look and it's just a game, but it does
Yeah,
become such a community feel. I mean, the players
yeah,
are, as you know, players have families and issues
yeah,
just like anybody else has families and issues and an attachment to the community. And so Buffalo is definitely one that it's bigger than football. It's definitely
yeah. So
family
I have
here.
a friend. I mean, he's retired, Chris Hale, who played for them, and like that's his everything. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like he talks
Yeah.
about how the fans were back then and how like the community was. And it was like, he speaks really highly about the organization and the town.
Yeah. Well, good. We have a positive Buffalo takeaway, at least from
Yeah.
our talk. When you were talking about extra, well, first, every time you said it, I have the little song in my head of every time it goes to the report. You had it. Go ahead, do it again.
It is extra.
That's it. That's
Right?
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. But I'm thinking when you're describing that, like the stock market type feel, right? We got this story, or go talk to this person. But did that urgency kind of trickle into your role? I mean, did you feel that when you're trying to cover stories or talk to people that
Yeah.
you had a pressure
Yeah.
to get information?
So I think that was where you just can't change who you are. My character, my values, and I'm not speaking negative about people who are able to do it. It's just a different, skill set. But I'm not very good at it. Like I can remember specifically doing a movie junket for Laura Crawford. What movie was that? With Angelina Jolie. And a movie junket, everyone's in their hotel rooms and extra. We're in our room, and next to us is Access Hollywood. It was Billy Bush. I'll never forget.
Okay.
And her PR person comes in and she says, okay, we're going to only ask about the movie. We're going to ask about this. We're going to stay away from this topic. We're going to stay. I think it was like her dad, and again, I was raised in a home where you respect people. So
Right.
I was like, okay, and sure enough, as soon as her producer, or I think it was her personal PR person, I don't know, left, in my ears, my producer saying, okay, so we're going to start off, we're going to ask her about Laura, about the movie. We're going to ask this, and that. And then we're going to end it. We're going to ask about her father. And I'm thinking, did you not just hear, like how do you do, it's really difficult for me to do that. Like it's difficult for me to violate people's privacy or to just be pushy or to, just have no couth. So I,
Yeah.
again, was just kind of like, I got this. Watch, this interview is going to be so amazing. They're not even going to. And I'm like, I asked everything about the movie, but then I kind of like freelance, asked her about her personal life, like asked her how it feels like being a mom now, doing her own stunts, and she just like opened up, and she actually got up and gave me a hug after the interview and said, this has been one of the most fun interviews. So I'm feeling good. Or she walks out and my producer's like cussing me out. They're just like, you were supposed to ask this. And I was just like, but it was difficult for me to do that after we were told not to. And they said, well, Billy Bush just asked. She said no comment. And I'm like, and that's what you wanted? And they're like, yeah. I'm thinking, yeah, I don't know about this life. So I
Yeah.
think that was difficult for me, especially being in a situation married to Jason at the time, knowing the feeling, knowing the, that violation and the level of disrespect. And maybe I was naive. Maybe I thought that, I can make this so interesting that won't matter. Well, that's not
Yeah.
how media works.
That's fascinating because as you're talking, I know a lot. I mean, my experience is more in the investigative space, and I'm thinking, well, how many people, whether they're like employers talking to employees about issues or law enforcement, they're often focused on, let me get the I did it, or let me get that one piece of evidence, and they have this urgency and like pressure to get that done, and are usually hit with a wall. But when you sit and develop rapport, and are a human first and investigator second, as people tend to be a little bit more giving and cooperative in the conversation.
I know. It's crazy because you see both. You see the ones that are human first, and you see the ones that are like investigator first or reporter first. And, listen, I didn't even do well working in retail if there was commission. Like I'm just not a
Yeah.
pushy person. So
Yeah.
you got to know your strengths, right? And then just kind of manage them and then just focus just on your strengths and manage your weaknesses, I should say. Yeah.
So for some of the kind of on this urgency trial, I'm thinking about in this last year, for just your perspective on this, in the at least in the NFL, what I've seen, maybe college as well, but they've got a lot of reporters now. Seems like almost every game they're asking the coach a question like right at halftime as they're going in, or right when they come out after halftime, or sometimes that I see they've piloted this idea of almost asking questions mid game.
Mhm.
What any idea what that might feel like as a reporter
So
to
here's the advantage I did have working for NBA TV was a guy could have broken into a home, you know, killed 3 people and, robbed them. And
Right.
we're going to ask him how his golf game's going. That was the advantage I had. So we were always, geared towards positive, making the NBA look good, making the guys look good. So I never had to be in those positions
Yeah.
until I was asked to cover the Olympics with Extra. So they wanted me to cover, I believe we were in Australia, but where were the preliminaries before the, yeah, my memory. But I remember being at a practice where everybody was there and they wanted me to ask Allen Iverson very intrusive questions. And
Mm.
I was like, it's not happening. I'm sorry. Like this is my family before this is my job. And there was even a couple other questions with other people. And I kind of thought, you know what I'll do is I'll just tell these guys, I'm going to ask you this. So you be prepared and you can just tell me to like F off. I don't care. So,
Right.
yeah, but I couldn't have that level of betrayal. I wasn't gonna do that. And I'm not gonna lie to you, these things were a problem. And it's probably why I'm not working with Extra anymore,
Yeah.
because they could care less about, sports. They're bigger than that. So they're kind of like,
Right.
you're not here because you're Jason Kidd's wife. You're here because we really thought you're a very good reporter. You've got, you really, and I am, you know what I mean? I really can disarm someone. But in a positive way, not in a way where I'm trying to, harm them, make them feel uncomfortable, or, make it awkward.
Do you ever, I was just watching because now like Netflix and Hulu and all these different streaming services seem to be really focused on true crime. And so I
We
get
were just
myself,
talking.
which we'll talk about obviously in your experience, but I find myself watching a lot of, these interrogations and thinking kind of in hindsight, why would they ask it that way? Why did they do this that way? Do you ever feel that when you're just watching reporters on the sidelines or in post game or talking to celebrities of, do you
Well,
ever get that? What are you doing?
yeah. Yeah, and I was actually taught that. I was taught that if you ask enough times, you'll get that. You'll get that soundbite. You just want that soundbite, and
Yeah.
and that was the going back to Angelina Jolie, with her telling Billy Bush, "I have no comment," and being feisty when she said it, like that was enough for them to spin off, like, and feeling uncomfortable, and like it's just it's disgusting, but it is what it is. And I do feel like there's a relevance there with interrogations, especially with young people. You know what I mean? Like you can sit there and ask and ask and ask until you kind of are getting, what you want.
Well, now, because you brought that up, I think it's a good point. You've got three kids.
Mhm. Yeah.
How much of your interview experience in your as they were growing up, or even maybe now, have you used to determine what's going on in their life?
Well, my son is like such a guy. Like honestly, whatever words I can get out of him is just, so yeah, I don't know if there's any interview skill they can get
Yeah.
guys, that are in that in a guy mode, I think that I don't know if it would be interview skills. I think, being, a mom is something just that it's more the human side of it, of just kind of knowing that you just want to, again, maybe it is part of a skill from, being a journalist, is that you just want to disarm people. You don't want to, back someone into a corner, because if you've got someone just completely defending, then, what's the point of that? You want to just be able to keep it a safe environment, and
Yeah.
not feel judged, or yeah, but that's not, that doesn't make the news. That doesn't sell.
There's no magic wand, right? And you never know what somebody's feeling that day or why they're resistant to talking or what else is going on in their mind. And that,
I will tell you something really funny though. So one time when I was working for Extra, there was kind of an inside joke I had with one of my cameramen, and he just thought it was hilarious that I never knew who like major people were, like I would just
yeah,
miss it. Um, yeah. So he would always like he like would literally be like, "There's Tom Cruise coming with," and I'm like, "Okay, okay, I got it." And then another thing I was really not great at was being like if someone's walking by, I'm waiting for them to stop to talk to us. I'm not like throwing the microphone in
Right.
their face, and so someone else would, and I would wait, and I just didn't have that aggressive nature. And I was going to prove a point. Like he and I had I think we had a bet going, whatever. And I'm like, watch, you're going to be like blown away. And I see Robert De Niro coming, but being that I'm not as well versed on everyone, I didn't know that everyone knew that Robert De Niro doesn't talk to the press. So he's just walking, and I hear Billy Bush say, I was always next to Billy. And it's funny because we're friends like now, he's great.
Yeah.
I hear Billy say "Oh, what's up with the beard?" Because I guess he was growing a beard, whatever. And I was like, "Oh, I got this. I'm going to get this before Billy." So as soon as Robert De Niro walks up in front of me, I mean, it was clear, no mics were in his face, nothing. So I just was and I was like, "Tell us about the beard." And he looked at me and he goes, "It's for a role." And I was like, "Thank you." And everyone, it was hilarious. The whole carpet was just rolling. They were just like, "That's when you chose to do it." I'm like, "I didn't know," but he answered. I think he was
You
so
got a
shocked.
response. You got a response. That counts as
Yeah,
something.
yeah. I had no idea that I broke a big rule that day, but
When you in that space, are you I mean, is it whoever comes across it, if you can get a question answer, that's a win? Or do you have a list of here's who I definitely want to try to talk to today?
depending on what it is, if it's an awards show or something like that, you just have no idea who's gonna. I mean, you kind of have a list. Your producer should have a list of kind of giving you a heads up. But there's lots of surprises, or someone will come up, and then it's really, if you have a good producer, you've got it made, because they're the ones that are doing the study. They're the ones that are just like, "Oh my gosh, that's so," and that'll just trigger something to ask them. Um, and then there's the people that are there for the promo. They want to get
Right.
on and they want to talk about certain things. One thing I always just like to ask people is tell me what projects you're working on, because I know that this is your opportunity to talk about that. Um, but say that it's, I don't know, a movie premiere or something, you might keep it focused on the movie or whatever's. But again, no matter what, if you're an A-lister and you have things going on in your life, the questions are going to be asked that you know you're probably expecting, and you know most people on the carpet are also asking. So you just want to be
Yeah.
unique. That's what I always try to do, is something super different to have
Well, I like
fun.
that. And even that question that you just kind of posed, would tell me what projects you have going on, or however you ask that,
Yeah.
allows somebody else to tell you what they prioritize or what's exciting to them. And then they're then bought into that topic in the conversation, right? Because then you can explore that
Mhm.
a little bit further.
Exactly.
Did
Exactly.
you, was there, I'm sure there was resistance that you encountered in some interviews. And I know you already mentioned, you're not a pushy person and you don't want to be invasive. You don't have to, but I'm sure there's times where somebody was a little resistant and you had to try to overcome that. Anything you can think
I
of, or what?
One thing that I can think of was that it was an interview where she was so mean. It was a sit down interview, and she literally was sitting across from me, so annoyed, just really rude. And as soon as it was rolling, she was like, "Thank you, David." And then it was cut, and she's like, I'm like, "Oh, this is scary."
Yeah.
That was probably a unique. Honestly, I can't say that I really experienced stuff like that, because again, I was not pushy and I kind of knew how to read a room. And also I had relationships on my, for example, Michael Douglas would sit at the games with me all the time. So Reese Witherspoon, I would see her, outside of these environments. So, they would even come to me I remember being at an event, and Kelly Ripa got there super late. It was a movie premiere, and she got there really late, and then she runs past me to go to the entrance, and she sees me and she runs back. She's like, "Come on, let's quickly do an interview before," you know what I mean? Because she was being a friend.
Right.
So, I feel and that's also why I never liked to cross the boundaries, because I valued those friendships and I didn't want to, you know, just for a soundbite, to
Well, yeah, I think that's a testament to how important relationships are too. I mean, and people see the value, the integrity that you have, not as just as a journalist, but as a person. And
yeah.
that same thing happens, I know, in the investigative space, is when you get maybe law enforcement that has a disenchanted relationship with the community, that's going to impact people's cooperation down the road. Where if the
Yeah.
perception is, hey, we're here to help and we have integrity and we're transparent, you get a different level of cooperation.
Yeah.
So you mentioned different names there, and I think there's two different verticals, but I guess they blend. Is you've got this kind of celebrity space, which is that from in the actors and actresses space, and then you have the celebrity space with athletes. Did you notice a difference, I guess, in the example you just gave, is the ability for, I guess, people to answer a question and almost put on a facade because that's what their
Yeah.
career is, versus maybe an athlete isn't as accustomed to that, or maybe they are because they're doing
Yeah.
interviews all the time.
Mhm. I feel like for me, it was always easier and more natural to interview athletes. Um, Maybe because, I don't know. I think that with entertainers, there's a little bit more with certain entertainers, especially A-listers. There's a certain amount of, yeah, you're not that you're walking on eggshells, but like um, I don't want to be negative because there's a lot of great ones out there too, but a little bit more of a chip on the shoulder, a little bit more, and I would hate using names, but, like, I remember interviewing this one, and I just thought, like, I loved her, and then when I interviewed her, I was like, "You're horrible. You're a mean, mean person." Like, just her energy and her, like, she's doing me a favor, you know what I mean? And, like, it's just, like, you don't get that as much with athletes. I think, like, it's more, but then again, maybe because I was part of that family too. So maybe I was Jason's wife. They got to know me in that light. So it was a safe zone. I worked for NBA TV, so you always knew that it was going to be positive. So there was no guard. There was no, hesitation. I did a radio show in Phoenix with Roy Green, who's a retired football player, this other guy, Roy Garibaldi, and then Charles Barkley. And it was called Talking Sports, the Positive Side of Sports. So everything was positive, like overly positive. Again, like, spinning off the NBA, like we didn't jam guys up. And because the energy was so fun, people like lined up to be on this show. So we would do golf tournaments, and at one point at the table, like, we're just trying to interview one person. We'd have like 6 guys sitting there and all like, franchise players. And it's the banter and they're talking mess and it was just so positive and fun. And I think that that's what's fun about working in sports is like when you can, get that environment and that like, camaraderie, it's really awesome. And people love to be like a fly on the wall in that environment. They love to hear the banter and the like, things that they're saying to each other.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm picturing. Did you advise Charles Barkley how to swing a golf club? Was that your fault, or?
I caddied for him
Oh,
one year for like 3 holes and I was done. Like, first
quite
of
the
all,
experience.
he didn't carry travel clubs. So he had like a full like, and that was at the height of that horrible swing. Like that was when it was yeah, it was like 3 different parts to the swing.
That's
And
yes,
oh, it
exactly.
was horrible, horrible, but so
That's
fun.
funny.
So
Yeah.
fun.
The so as you're talking, I like that. So the positive side of sports, and because you're talking about something that drives these athletes, and it's fun
Yeah.
and exciting for them. But I'm curious too on the other side, as just a spectator, it seems like we often see, a team loses, and you get that interview right post game or right in the locker, and football season just ended for a lot of teams, and so they're doing locker clean out, and these reporters are asking questions, and you get a 1 minute 30-second soundbite, and everybody's got speculation. Is this person are they unhappy on the team? Are they leaving? What does this word mean or that word mean? What did it feel like, I guess, when you get, what's the full context of some of these conversations? Or I guess how important is context that you're getting
Well,
that 30-second sound clip that makes
yeah.
it live?
Well, again, it's dangerous because there's emotion and there's, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's like, I think it takes a lot of control. Because
Yeah.
again, like when you're interviewing an athlete after a game or after a loss or after a rumor or whatever, they could easily lead with emotion, as opposed to, getting an A-lister on the red carpet who got dressed and prepared and, you know, like completely like had a run through with their PR people. And so I think that it's tricky, and it kind of can set these guys up for some, negative stuff. But I will say that what people don't realize is, and I'm sure it's even worse now with Twitter X, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Um, because back when I was married to Jason, I remember when he got traded, we were like in the Taco Bell drive-through, and one of my producers or cameraman texted me or called me, whatever, and he was like, are you bummed? Are you excited? Like, New Jersey, like, what are you thinking? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you
Yeah.
guys just got traded. And I look at Jason, I was like, dude, you just got traded.
Oh my
And he
goodness.
was like, what? So
Yeah,
I think a lot of these guys like learning things through media, and that's got to be tough. It's got to be a little bit of a, I don't know, betrayal maybe. Like it's
sure.
hard. Yeah.
Well, and living in that public space, which you did. So obviously between your career being very public and Jason obviously being very public in the NBA, and we talked a little bit about this, but I'm thinking about, in today's world, we're seeing Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce all over the place, and you wonder, how difficult is it on their side of things, on your side of things, right? When you're trying to just live your life, but everybody's looking at every little moment
Yeah.
and examining it and coming up with theories and all this kind of crazy stuff. Any insight to what that experience would be
You know,
like?
I was, my kids and I were talking about this the other day because, everyone's getting on Taylor Swift, like, like you're ruining football and whatever they're saying to her. And I can't compare it even at like a 1%. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Taylor Swift is humongous, huge,
Right.
biggest thing ever right now. And, my situation is so minuscule. But I do remember when, again, basketball was new to me, professional sports and being married to an athlete was very new to me. So when we were living in New Jersey, and a season ticket holder who was so kind and nice basically gave me his two extra courtside seats, and TJ and I would sit there, and so exciting. And um, the cameras would pan on us, and my mom would text me. She's like, I just saw you on ESPN or whatever. Or just, it was like all exciting and fun. And then the negativity came, like, she's such a camera whore. Why is she, and I'm like, I didn't ask anyone to film me, or like, and half of it I look crazy because I don't even know I'm being filmed, and I've got like all these like crazy cheering faces going. And it was hurtful, it was mean, and then I'll never forget one day we're in the playoffs. We're in the final, no, the playoffs with the Celtics. And we know that rivalry is nuts, New Jersey and Boston. And they posted a photo of me sitting at the game on the cover of the Post. And it was like a dig at the Celtics, something like, or it was the Celtics. Basically, it was me, and it was a dig saying something along the lines of like, they're so boring, or they suck so bad, they've got to focus on his wife is the only
Uh,
thing worthy writing about, or something like that. And then this guy named Bob Ryan, who's like a really well-known, sportscaster guy there, uh, makes a comment on his radio show, I guess, about me, like a really bad one. And I had no idea. So I guess Bob Ryan said something about me along the lines of, yeah, I'd like to punch Joumana Kidd in the face, or something like really bad. Yeah, so he said that, and so I had no idea. So I come to the game, and I have like six reporters, bombarding me saying like, what are your thoughts on Bob Ryan? How do you feel about Bob Ryan? What happened? What do you think about Bob Ryan? And my initial instinct was that something horrible happened to this man, and I should know who
right.
he is, and I should know what happened. So I just said, my heart just goes out to his family. So I go sit down next to Jason's agent was at that game. And I was like, Jeff, who's Bob Bryant? And everyone keeps asking me, like, what are my thoughts on Bob Bryant? Whatever, what happened? Who's this guy? And he was like, oh, shoot, I should have told you. Bob Bryant said this and that about you, and they're thinking of suspending him. I'm like, and then I was like, well, I guess that kind of goes. My heart goes out to his family. But, that the next day, that quote was everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
But
But it's probably better that you were ignorant to what he said at the time, because who knows what your response would have been.
And knowing me, I mean, it would have been along those lines, just not that like cryptic. Like it would have been
Right.
more like, it sucks to be a mean person like that. And but I say all that to say that on such a small scale, I felt it. So I can't imagine how that must make her feel. You know what I mean? Because she really does seem like a really nice, genuine, down to earth person from everything I've ever heard about her. And to have to hear people like say like, stop coming to the games, leave, you're ruining football for us, whatever. In her little world, she's in love and they're happy, and she's so happy to see him play, and she's loving getting to know his family and friends, and she's a human, and that's it. Just like I was enjoying my husband playing and kicking butt at the time, and my son's having a ball, and like I'm in that moment, you know what I mean? And I'm not looking at the perception of others, where when people do calculate and think of the perception of others, they seem to get away with it. But when you're just kind of like living your best life and enjoying the moment, then you're always going to have critics. And if you're not, the only thing I will say is that I'm sure Taylor Swift, this isn't her first rodeo with having to hear negativity. So I'm sure she'll be fine. And I hope that they don't change a thing. I hope she does whatever she's doing. And I think they're adorable. And I really hope that they stay together. They're really cute.
Yeah, she's a boss. I mean, she knows she's running the show, and she's incredible. And
everything
but yeah, I think
pretty awesome.
Yeah, but it's interesting because people just, like we talked earlier, don't have that perspective of. I mean, imagine if your life was under scrutiny all the time like that. People are asking you questions. What?
But like, I think I don't remember who it was, but did an interview where he timed the airtime she was getting. It like boiled down to nothing. It was like 10 seconds at this game. You know what I mean? It's like big deal.
Thanks, Joumana. Really appreciate your insight today. Always interesting to see how the insight or the experience from somebody in the journalism world can translate into our everyday lives and effective communication techniques. I hope you all join us for part 2, where we're going to flip the script and we're going to talk to Joumana about her experience being the victim of a financial crime and identity theft scam. In that episode, we're going to talk more about how it feels to be interviewed, or how to interact with law enforcement or investigators, and what that perspective looks like, so everybody involved in those types of conversations can learn from it and be a better communicator. We'll see you in part 2. Thanks for listening. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And to keep this conversation going, follow the Truth Be Told podcast on LinkedIn and Truth Be Told CFI on Twitter. On behalf of the International Association of Interviewers, Rick Landers-Zalowski, and our valued sponsors, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Truth Be Told podcast.